Oh, he done.
I have time for like 1 or 2 questions.
I couldn't remember stuff.
I've got time for 1 or 2 questions.
I want Alex to come up here for a minute. Come on, Alex.
What about the beginning of the labs? The history of the labs.
Come on.
We want Alex. Alex. Yeah, let's put you okay.
So,
take it
yeah.
on because we have all our friends together.
I honestly think
They were honest, yeah.
Since then, you're living with this half-truth that, you know, in order to get by and not make some kind of trouble, you will say or do something and you walk away from something.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
But then it was like lightning. Somebody did something wrong, and the lightning came down.
Right, it struck, right.
It was gratifying.
Yeah, but we also have to, like, you know,
Yeah.
we're civilized, right? And we have to, like, you know, at some point we have to, like, you know, what you're saying is that there's like an honesty to violence, right? And like you're saying, like if you did some crazy thing and said, oh, I'm an attorney, so you can't touch me, and then X head just goes, yeah, bang, you know, and like hits you, yeah, there's an honest, quick justice. But, you know, when that stuff is aggrandized and is supported to a great degree, you know, then sometimes you get this sort of chaos that, you know, I think could be avoided a lot of the times. You know, now, for me, like a lot of times, instead of resorting to violence, I'll just be, you know, I'll just say like, oh, I'll ignore the person totally or whatever, and I don't have to like scuff up my nails, and I don't have to, you know, I don't know, have my brother jump on him and grab his head and bang his head against the ground, you know, and then feel like, ah, I got blood all over my hands, you know, it's kind of messy, right? Violence can be messy, as you know, as we all know, right? So,
I think a lot of us came out of less than perfect situations, and we're processing as best we could.
Clean.
right, right.
In some cases, some of us came out of violent homes, so
Yeah.
we were processing the way we knew.
Right,
I got
Yeah.
into yoga so that I could better process
this stuff.
the
Yeah, there's a guy who wrote a whole book about, his name's Jocko Willink. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's a Navy SEAL guy, Master Chief now. And Jocko Willink wrote a book called like The Justification of Violence. And so what he talked about was there are some cases where, you know, it is perhaps necessary. It's talking about people shielding. You know, it's like imagine if you're, one of the things he said was imagine shielding somebody, your neighbor shields himself against U.S. forces with your daughter. That's what they're dealing with there. So in those cases, these people, and knowing that that daughter's then going to be taken away to this tribe or whatever as like a prisoner basically, you know, so he was saying that, you know, in some cases perhaps it's not always wrong. If they have, what he was saying is we have snipers that can actually take this person out with, you know, knowing that for sure that that person will just die instantly. And he was saying that, you know, in those cases maybe it's a little more justified because it's going to prevent this innocent girl from being, you know, mistreated for the rest of her life, basically, according to our lenses, right? So that was an interesting thing, and so what we were processing was broken homes, you know, sort of the Dogtown story, you know, broken homes, single parents, not enough money, capitalism, no, you know, real government structure that gives you enough, you know, so all of those things, I think you're right. I think we were processing that stuff, you know.
I mean, and in some ways it was a more innocent time in the sense that, like, my oldest son is 30. Most of the fights I know, isn't that a trip? All right, 30. I know, I look that way, right? Not all, most of the fights and scuffles that we got into didn't result in death or permanent dismemberment.
Right.
And I say that not casually, but I'm meaning to say I got in a lot of fights.
Yeah.
Long story. But nobody was, you know, permanently damaged. Whereas fast forward into the 90s and kids were using guns and knives, whereas we were predominantly using fists. Were there circumstances that happened, like what you were talking about? Yes. Were there circumstances that I saw that were horrible? Yes. but it is something that tends to escalate.
Right. And that's kind of what, you know, so that's like, it's this weird thing, you know, where you have, on the one hand, you have the Jocko Willink of the world, and those guys are, you know, I come from a military, all of my family was in the military. My dad, my mom, and my dad was a career Marine and in the Army, so like, you know, that's, some of that has probably rubbed off on me as well. But the question is, ultimately, where does it stop? So like, if I'm in a room of a bunch of violent people, I have a choice. He can say, surfers can be kind of territorial, they can say whatever they want, and usually, I just totally ignore them, and it just falls flat. It's called fighting. Bruce Lee talks about this. Fighting without rolling up your sleeves, you know? There's a scene where there's a drunk guy on a boat, and he says, I do the fighting without fighting method. And he says, okay, and the guy challenges him, so he goes to a little island. The drunkard jumps off on the island, and he kicks the boat away, and he strands the guy in the middle of the ocean. And he says, you know, bye, now you'll learn the art of the, you know, fighting without fighting. So like, I mean, not that that necessarily was the right way to do it, but I'm just saying it's an interesting skill set, right? So there are different ways for us. And as we got older, I think a lot of punks, we did find other ways to process it. You know, right? I mean, I think didn't a lot of, like now we don't just haul off and just punch somebody when they say something. No?
No, I do martial arts. I just quit drugs honestly like 10 years ago, and even to that point, fighting was part of it. I loved it. And even as I got older, I kind of missed that. I
Like the violent aspect? You just like
I don't mind being hit.
Really?
Kind of like, okay, cool.
Wow.
Yeah, but I love hitting people. Even if I'm almost 54 and it's still
that hard.
yeah.
Yeah, there might also be, I mean, it is possible, like we talked about this, it's almost like it's possible that there is, like they're saying, like a violent gene, like the streak, you know, violent streak everyone talks about. And, you know, we are ultimately animals, right? So it's not like just because we become civilized, all these instincts suddenly disappear. You know, like you probably, like me, all of your family we were like an army caste, right? In India, they talked about the Kshatriya, right? Which is like a caste, and we're essentially, you know, just like the bees have the worker bees and the fighting bees, right? Well, maybe there's a little bit of that as well in human beings. And because we're civilized, we're trained to try to squash it completely. And it doesn't just completely go away, right? It usually will find some way. You do martial arts, I do extreme sports, you know? So like these are all the different ways, you know, that we process that stuff, but hopefully not as many people will get hurt in the you know, in the wake of that, right?
We'll bring on the music, and I think
All right,
we'll
thank you
continue
guys.
the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, books that I mentioned at the beginning, they're all available at the front register. Brenda will be signing at the back information desk. She was also kind enough to bring cookies and water and gum and other...
No beer.
No beer, unfortunately, but that's all at the back.
Next time there'll be beer.
Let's give it up for Brenda and all of our readers. Thank you very much.
All you guys.
So we probably can hear if they'll have
We'll have
it.
you.
So it just, you know.